out incredibly well for the rebels. By attacking civilians with chemical weapons, they managed to turn the world against Assad once again. Then, as an added bonus, they even got the United States to fight their war for them, destroying Syrian planes and keeping the skies clear of aircraft. All without any proof that President Assad ordered the chemical attack.
But with respect to the people of Syria, by us taking action and de-escalating what's going on in Syria, that's the greatest thing you can do to support those people. De-escalating the conflict there, containing ISIS, is the greatest aspect of humanitarian relief that we can provide first and foremost.
So it was a humanitarian strike then. The U.S. did it to protect the people of Syria, even though the U.S. airstrike reportedly killed 9 innocent civilians, including 4 children. All right, so it was for the greater good. Now, how about the Syrian people? What do they have to say about the strikes? I mean, we're supposed to be helping them after all, aren't we?
We are against this strike. It's a strike against the Syrian people. The world knows these planes, which were destroyed, were protecting us, and they destroyed the airport too. This is the country's loss. We oppose the American attack. I don't want anything to undermine Syria's sovereignty. I want Syria to return to its former power, the former greatness of its people. We are welcomed in every country in the world, but don't belong anywhere but in our own country.
So we've severely damaged Syria's air force, killed civilians, and made it easier for terrorists to continue carrying out attacks. What's the end goal here?
Our impression that the West, mainly the United States, is hand in glove with the terrorists. They fabricated the whole story in order to have a pretext for the attack.
Well, the end goal could be a no-fly zone over Syria. That would mean creating an area over northern Syria along Turkey's border and in other areas like Hasaka, which would effectively block all Russian and Syrian planes from carrying out missions. The idea is to limit civilian casualties by preventing airplanes from dropping bombs. Interestingly, opposition forces and jihadists say it would be a great idea, and they've been demanding a no-fly zone for years. And Turkey, who's waging a war on ethnic Kurds along its southern border, is also a big fan of the no-fly zone. So far, senior U.S. military leaders have said it would be a terrible idea, despite championing from former presidential candidate Hillary Clinton, and would lock the U.S. into a role as a permanent protector of Syria's airspace. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the calls for such a zone were renewed following the latest alleged chemical attack by Assad. It's interesting how much terrorists have gained from this supposed attack and how much Assad has lost. But there's absolutely no doubt that he did it.
We are not only waging a war against terrorists, but also against the mass media that takes every single anti-Syrian statement as absolute truth. We cannot fight the anti-Syrian information campaign in the Western media that supplies the news content to the majority of the world's media.
And what about America's role in the story now? What does the road look like from here now that the U.S. is involved? Well, following the first U.S. attack on Syria in the country's 6-year civil war, President Trump may be reversing his previous position.
And I really understand what's going on in Syria because you look at it, first of all, it's a total catastrophe, it's a total mess. And we're helping to make it a mess. Now, we have ISIS, and ISIS wants to go after Assad. But we're knocking the hell out of him, even though it's not a very full-blown thing. We're still dropping bombs all over the place, and, you know, look, they're not exactly loving life over in Syria.
So now, after years of condemning Washington, Obama, and Hillary Clinton for meddling in the Middle East and overthrowing regimes, it seems Trump could be on the same path. Senior U.S. officials, including the Secretary of Defense, have warned that it would be a very bad idea for Assad to drop any more chemical weapons, suggesting military action if any more atrocities are committed. Well, considering how well that turned out for the rebels this time, and knowing that they have access to vast stores of chemical warheads, it's anyone's guess whether or not that will happen and how it will turn out.
The vicious slaughter of innocent civilians with chemical weapons, including the barbaric killing of small and helpless children and babies, must be forcefully rejected by any nation that values human life.
So what now? What's the real story? The real story is that no one knows the real story. All we have are massively conflicting accounts from groups that are diametrically opposed to one another. But the mainstream media still insists on painting a very tidy picture of events. And their version goes that Assad is a brutal dictator who savagely will attack anyone to stay in power, and the U.S. is doing its humanitarian duty by opposing him and punishing his regime with missile strikes based solely on evidence provided by an extremely anti-Assad group with clear ties to terrorists. Considering all these facts, the picture gets a little messier. The pieces just don't fit, and it's up to us to find the missing information and try and complete the picture, even though the narrative may not be mainstream media approved. One thing is clear, however. As the brutal war continues to take its toll, it's the people of Syria who are paying the price. For One America News, I'm Pearson Sharp.